Well, hello. Welcome to Countercharge. What is this madness? Middle of the day, or in the case of Ronnie, dinner time, or in the case of Mr. Crozier, 5:30 in the morning or something like that?
Yep. Still in my pajamas. You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, I will say.
I won't show you my bottom half.
Well, I was going to say, I could go cool shirt. Problem. We're always expecting the really nice shirt. I would have figured the pajamas would have been an opportunity to go extreme. You know, and have something really
true.
I was expecting silk pajamas on you, Matt. a nice smoking jacket, silk pajamas, and a cigarette in a holder.
Well, I've left that and the leather in the bedroom.
Oh, brother, man, we thought doing it during the day we would, it wouldn't devolve to after dark, but here we are.
Here we are. Look, we keep Countercharge the podcast clean, but we've never set restrictions on the YouTube channel. So
we have not. So Ronnie, feel free to swear if you would like to.
Yeah.
I swear, am I?
I will probably drop at least one F-bomb.
Okay, well that's fine because I swear all the time and I don't even know I'm doing it.
You're off the chain for this one, mate.
Okay, fine, I can do that.
Dave Fanning is the first one to post. Hi, Ronnie, and Woof first post. Awesome. So
hi. Gonna try and
Matt, you want to get us rolling?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for joining us. What is tonight for you, Ronnie? We're going to have a bit of a chat about all things Kings of War, and we've got some questions about other Mantic games because of course you've had the from the outside seems to be the successful release of Firefight.
Yep.
So we've got a couple of questions around that and things as well. Of course, we've got the big red book launching early. Now, this is what I want to draw attention to. Is this the first early shipping of a Mantic product ever?
We were always yeah. So we've recruited some talent, and surprisingly, everything started happening. So we got a guy from Rolls Royce who's just kind of got us organised. In fairness, Matt had got it sent away. I mean, if someone said to you, how was the pandemic? I said, boy, oh boy, did we work hard at that operations. It might have looked like we kept a lid on it on the outside, but the disruption behind the scenes was just non-stop. And actually, I think our release schedule suffered a bit for it because I was spending a lot of time just moving things around and physically and release schedule items, but, literally moving things from here to there and there to here and release dates and deliveries of Kickstarters and boats just stopped. Then they started turning sideways in the Suez Canal, and so we've now got it. It's printed. We've started shipping it. If you've got your pre-orders and he's on his way, it's got all the stores to kind of go, oh, we better order that then. So we'll actually have it on the release date for the first time. Early, exciting. Got a few flown in. Which we talked to Clash of Kings, to all the people that had come down to the Clash weekend. Very, very, very exciting. I'm sure we'll talk more about it.
Yeah, awesome. And what was the idea, like from your point of view? Like what brought you to this idea of this amalgamation back into one book? Obviously, with the launch of Third, it was, I won't say always the intent, but it was the intent for quite a while that you would still have this split book. What brought you coming back towards just having a single book?
Yeah, so it was. I was just posting on the Mantic page there that we're all up and running. So it was a few things. What had happened is 2019, as we know, was supposed to be the year of recruitment and tournaments and the reset of 3. As always, the first year of a new game when the rubber hits the road. No matter how much play testing you do and no matter how much beta testing, someone always finds a way of min-maxing something truly horrific. And by the end of the year, tournament seeds, every army is reflected with a 17 chariots and 4 dragons combination. And so the expectation is the Clash of Kings year one, book one is always the kind of, okay, fix everything that's broke. And then from then on, you start evolving it through the edition. You've got a few things that you've got, but of course that didn't happen in 2020 because no one could play any games. So the 2020 book was the one at the end of 2020, so 2021. We ended up with just Halpy's Rift. It was a background book. There wasn't a lot of new rules because we didn't have anything to write because we hadn't had 10,000 games of Kings of War across America, Australia, UK, Spain, Germany, France. Blah, blah, blah. We then added the Clash 2022 book, was now both the year one book that never got written and, you want to spice it up a bit. So by this point, we're starting to play around a bit. So it was a kind of double whopper edition. But then we looked at 2023. We've got a few things we wanted to do. There's a few things that needed balancing. But also, by this point, if you go into a tournament, you're carrying a hardback book with 200 pages of background in it. You're carrying Uncharted Empires. You're carrying Clash 2022. You're then adding Clash 2023 and potentially Halpy's Rift. So we thought, well, 5 books is probably a bit much. We're not a company that demands that you have 57 books just to play one army. We all catty, sorry. No, we just thought, well, come on, actually, you're going to give us 25 quid for Halpy's, for the Clash book, or 20 quid or whatever it is. Give us a tenner more, and we'll get rid of all of those, put them all in one place, clean them all up, have all the FAQ, have all of the updates in one place. And then we've got a couple of years where we can just crack on again. And it kind of, in some ways, pushed the 4th edition further down the line because I don't think we need it because we lost that year as well. And actually, we want to go on a massive recruitment drive. We've got some great plastics coming through. We've released some great plastics over the last year or two. So actually, we just wanted to allow everyone that's gaming, get gaming, go crazy, have fun, one book, let's go. And also, for anyone new coming up or when people see the game, it's dead easy to get into. Here you are. And, when you add in ambush and legendary, you've suddenly got something quite compelling. And the ambush stuff is kind of the recruitment stuff. So,
yeah, I mean, and we said we did a, like we'd literally had the book for 10 minutes when we did a podcast on it. But, Rob and I both thought that this is probably the most complete product that you've ever released for that reason, in that that we felt that, it's the first book that really has something for everyone in terms of that ambush, legendary, siege, that, whether it's the narrative or the competitive gamer, that it's just a complete book. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. No, thank you. I'm glad you're pleased with it because I think it is just I think we'll all be very proud of people saying, hey, what's this game you play? This, and what's the hardest thing with Kings of War? I think is getting to the first 750 points. And in olden days, when you got to 750 points, you were still 1,000 away from a game.
Yep.
And so, bonjour, Guillaume.
And on that, Ronnie, did you hope in the past that Vanguard would have been more of a gateway than what it has become, and that ambush is a little adjustment to that?
Yeah, I mean, I was literally talking this about with Matt Gilbert literally 2 hours ago because for both those reasons. So Vanguard, I love the narrative and playable part of the way that it meshes with the Kings of War game. It's the skirmishes before the battle, and I really love that. I think it's wonderful. I think the rules were a little crunchy. They didn't quite flow in the same way as normally our games do. And that's usually, actually Dead Zone 1 didn't. It wasn't until Dead Zone 2 that we really got it smooth. And I think by Dead Zone 3, it's incredibly smooth. It's a wonderful game. We've never had the Vanguard 2 yet. So it hasn't had that. You get them out, unless the best way to refine a rule set is to get it out there, get it being played, and then say, hey, right, here's a better version of that done in a better way. But what became clear is that if you take a sci-fi game like Dead Zone and you paint 20 figures, you're on a round base, and you've got your Iron Ancestor and a couple of heavies and everything else, you are already halfway to playing a skirmish squad-based sci-fi game because you use exactly the same figures in the same configuration. Whereas with Vanguard, all you painted was your heroes. You hadn't actually painted any units because you didn't use units. So both the game style and the miniatures that you collected took you that way, and Kings of War's this way. So it just didn't stack up. And we kind of, the narrative did, but the rest of it didn't. The miniatures, and naturally it's the miniatures that's your time-consuming bit, and it's the gameplay that didn't flow. So I think in and of itself, it was a nice game. I think if we did it now, we could do it better. There's things we've learned for sure. Matt was just running the studio, but it did a job. And it was good fun. I think people have enjoyed playing it, but it doesn't get that newbie in a store that's looking over your shoulder onto stage one, other than perhaps introducing to Panithor or Night Stalkers or Basileans or the Northern Alliance. And it did those things because it opened up 2-3 new factions for us. Whereas Ambush absolutely does do this. And what we've gone and done is we've gone back now. We've launched it. We've got a new kind of, I say app. I'm going to call it an app, but it's not. It's a website, but it looks like an app. But it's a website. And that's where we're going to give you the free rules. It's going to be how to play Kings of War, build your armies, ambush. Don't worry about 2,300 points, 350. And then we've got 6 sets coming out that are all plastic. Hard plastic that are, like the new Empire of Dust. Here's a cavalry sprue. Here's an infantry sprue, or 2 of each. 10 cavalry, 20 infantry. Right. Let's show you how to not come in on 20 mil bases, come in with the regiment bases. So that you can literally buy a little box of minis, go to the app, and actually the code is going to be on the back of the box. It's going to say, scan here. Boom, there's your rules. Right, play. And I think for the first time, those people that want to have a little dabble can do that without having to spend 4 months painting, gluing, sticking an army together. In a Sunday afternoon, you can have those figures glued together and glued on a base and a few tufts and off you go if you want to. Within a week or 2, you can be back at the game club in a slow grow. And then you had the fun stuff, then add a hero, add a war machine. Oh yeah, that's made it. That's good fun. So I think we can go on a massive recruitment drive with Kings of War in the new year in a way that absolutely leads you into the game itself, which is the hard but endless joy that is a mass battle war game. Because never mind, no 2 games are ever the same. They're never even alike.
Yep, and I think from a marketing point of view, that makes complete sense, right? I think those 2 releases just in themselves, the most common question on Fanatics when someone joins is, what books do I need to play the game? Well, now we can say just the one for now.
Yep.
And 2, like another question that was frequent is how many points come in one of these starter boxes? So, now you can say, well, there's enough points to play a game of Ambush. So, do it, set it up.
Play a game, and even with our 2-player sets, which were very popular, you got 2 half armies, but neither of them were enough points to play a game of Kings of War.
Yeah. You've got our Singaporean friends excited already, Ronnie, because you dropped a 6 army note there. Can you give them any more info on that?
EOD, just go back to that, because I think you've got most of them. I've got those on my phone. I can EOD, yes. Halflings, yes. Ogres, yes. Goblins, they're getting a chariot and the goblin sprues.
Night Stalkers.
Night Stalkers.
Northern Alliance.
Just so that Northern Alliance may be getting some juicy love in the middle of next year.
Get it here
for
first.
A new unit. Very exciting. I've got it on my phone. And 2 more soon to be revealed.
Okay.
I think with Forge Orcs might not have a second plastic kit. So we've tried to get armies with 2 plastic sets so that you don't just get 40 of the same figure. So the ogres have the chariot and the goblins have the mincer. Empire of Dust obviously have their cavalry and infantry. The goblin, so yeah.
You're on mute, Rob.
Yeah. Are we saying
Plus
we're getting a
more.
plastic mincer, Ronnie? Is that what I'm hearing?
Oh,
right.
There we go.
There it is. So yeah, plastic mincer's on its way. That's going to come out, and it just gets rid of another of those. We're knocking out the resin and we're knocking out the PVC wherever possible to take it to hard plastic. And the new ogre's fantastic, absolutely gorgeous. I don't know if you've seen them, but thick, juicy legs and beautiful detail. I mean, I liked our old PVC, but these are 30% better. They're just a better all-round miniature. And we've got a new tool maker. We're finding details that were on the tools that were on previous tools, but they never got picked up by the tool maker.
Ah, right. So you're finding the move to Poland has improved. Not only have you changed to a slightly different material, but you're getting a better quality out of it.
Because he's a gamer, and he's an engineer and a gamer.
Okay.
And so he gets what's important, and therefore doesn't do dumb things that make the manufacturing easier. Does the harder things that make the end product better.
Okay. Rob, you had a question around that.
Yeah, so I do want to. Yeah, we were talking about Ambush. Been playing Ambush a lot. It's fantastic. It's the game we always wanted as an introduction.
Great. Oh, good. I'm pleased.
But there are people out there that still want that crunchy, fantasy Black Ops as you described it, Vanguard. What's the future for Vanguard? Are you guys going to continue Vanguard? Are we going to see?
Yeah, we will. I definitely think we will. There's probably two futures for Vanguard, I'd say. And there's one where, and this is me talking, I'm talking years here. We're not talking next week or next month, but we've got a kind of mad idea for a. This is really bothering me now. There's a city that vanishes in and out of the world. It's a myth. It's not Brigadoon, is it? Anyway, and we're thinking that in one part of the Panithor, there could be one of those somewhere over the northern wastes that drifts in and out. And as it drifts in and out, you go in there to go and get your treasure. There's warpstone. There's going to be things in there. And that was going to be, particularly with the Twilight Kin, there's going to be a whole lot of this focus on this void stuff. That's the kind of magic realm, and the Twilight Kin are seriously dark and seriously messed up. So we've kind of got that one, and then we've got the more Black Ops Vanguard, going in, blowing up the weapons supplies and setting off that narrative around the game's game. And actually, we've got a few crazy things going on at the moment. So, I mean, we're going to put out some Vanguard Halflings and Riftforge Orcs, I want to say, in the next few weeks. So those that are still playing it can dive in and play with those. But I think it's definitely something that we will come back and revisit and potentially give it away as part of our, app subscription and say, here you go get your figures and play. Maybe it doesn't become a printed product, or maybe we dive back in again and say, okay, look, here's 10 new bags of minis and here's a new rule book and here's a 2-player set and let's go. Because, we're never short of ideas. It's the ability to turn those ideas into products and get them out into the market that's is the challenge.
And how's the book been received? I mean, obviously you had it at Clash of Kings. It was out. What's been the response?
I think nothing other than good touch wood so far. I mean, we people coming up at Essen looking for it. You guys have had a look at it, and I think one of the reasons why Uncharted Empires was a separate book was that we didn't know how psychotic lawyers were. And we didn't want anyone to ever turn up and say, you've got to bin all of your Kings of War rule books because it's got our army in it. And so in Uncharted Empires, we put all the armies that people may have collected for a certain other previous rank and flank game that we didn't do, added a few more of our own, and then said, here's a book, and if they tell us to put that in the bin, we can put it in the bin. But we don't have to scrap all of our actual rule books. As it happens, I was probably just being oversensitive and I don't understand how the law works. But better to be safe than sorry and have some kind of disaster there. As time's gone by, and as the armies have moved into our own direction more and more and more, but it's become a kind of moot point because there's obviously no direct connection between what we're doing now in Panithor and any games that people may have played previously with other miniatures. So it's just we weren't concerned about that, so it allowed us to finally bring it all in one book that until that point had been a challenge. And I think the other thing, and is what I've written a blog about, has not gone up, but the other one is don't start an army that we don't have miniatures for. It was one of those. That's why I dropped Twilight Kin. I don't know if you saw it, but I felt like when it was in Uncharted Empires, it was very obviously not Mantic. You know, we know you've got that army. You bought it over there. We want to give you some more playtime. We want you to play our game. We want you to play our game and welcome. Come on in. And we hope that over time we can inspire you to start playing with one of our armies and add steel behemoths and Brock Riders to your dwarf army, you know. And that's on us to make sure that you want to do that because the rules are cool and the models are cool. But it was getting to the stage where people were looking at these armies and going, I'm going to build a Twilight Kin army and I'm getting my imagination, I'm going to do this and that and the other. And then we're thinking, wait a second, that was you get you by. We're going to pick this up and we like the idea, but we're going to do something crazy with it. And so I had to start saying, okay, just understand, you know, if you make a Kingdoms of Men army and we make a Kingdoms of Men army, it might be nothing like what we had built. Your Kingdoms of Men was to allow you historical gamers to try Kings of War. Your Twilight Kin army was to allow you Dark Elf players to try Kings of War. I mean, Dark Elves are a lovely range of minis, but that's not. We're not beholden to that. That isn't the IP we're going to create. We're going to go and say that's so. You know, it's also thrown back some challenges on us that said, you know, we've got to be careful what message we're sending. That's why I said if you're going to put it in our actual rule book, we've got to say that's kind of valid, and we're prepared to stand behind it.
Yeah. So, would it be fair to say that this is almost a little bit of a signal from Mantic about your future direction that, you know, you are going to go your own way? And so, you know, expect that, you know, you will be encouraged in some way to look towards Mantic for your models.
I mean, I think we've always been that way. Sometimes we've been more subtle than others, and sometimes more through either well-meaning incompetence on my part. You know, actually in the blog I say, listen, if there's a hierarchy, I would rather you play Kings of War with someone else's models than not Kings of War at all. But above that, I would prefer you played Kings of War with my models. For two reasons. Because it helps us pay the wages of the 28 people we've got working for us, and we can reinvest in the game and reinvest in plastics. And I've always said, even when I was at the other place, good hobby, good business. You need both. It's got to be a healthy hobby. If it's a toxic hobby, it's bad. If it's exploitive, if it's all about the money at the expense of the hobby, that's bad. But if you don't have a good business, then you're spending your time worrying about the business. You can't subsidize the hobby base for years. But if you've got it nicely in balance, hobbyists, if they're playing your game, are happy to give you money. You know, if you make nice products, they say, look, I love what you're doing here, have some cash. And then keep spending it on what you're doing, keep doing it.
And look, I think from my point of view, it's a completely reasonable, you know, direction to be moving further into. So with that, sorry, you go, Ronnie.
No, sorry, I'm so sorry. I get it. But I'm saying it's that's where the creativity comes from. You know, I mean, I think the coolest things we've done with the dwarfs, for example, we'll talk about them. That's my army, the steel behemoth, and that came away from us. What can we do that would be cool? That would be different? We got our first drawings would look like a go-kart. We said, no. Let's go again. And then we said, well, what are dwarfs? They're big, they're slow. What animals are? Rhinos. Okay. Well, let's make a mechanical rhino that's heavily armored, you know, and then let's stick, what do? They have guns and artillery. We'll stick one of those on top then. And then when you've got that, suddenly the drawing draws itself. And then you get this beautiful big thing that feels very dwarven. And, you know, I think, and then you put the Brock Riders and the PVC, they're good. I think if we sculpted them again now in hard plastic, they'd be wow. And we could do heavy and light variants. And I'm sure that will happen at some point. But, you know, suddenly dwarfs don't have cavalry. Oh, yes, they do. And so I think we've always kind of signaled that intent, but at times we've run forward and other times we've sometimes stepped backwards because we've written rules for armies we don't make that are better than the armies we make. And that's just kind of, what we're doing here. We're actively encouraging people to go scouring eBay. Come on, let's be sensible.
I mean, it also comes back to that point, though, that, we've highlighted many times before on the podcast, you are only a company of 28 people. So, like you said, you encouraged all these people in, but then you've somehow got to cope with that.
Correct.
Yeah,
and that's why we just, and that's why the pandemic was difficult for us, because instead of Matt and I spending our time talking about next year's release schedule, we're talking about, crumbs, everything started to sell on the web. We've sold a load of this, but none of that. What we're going to do about this? Oh, that boat's delayed. China's closed down. We've got to get an update out saying, sorry, your Kickstarter is going to be delayed. And you're in firefighting mode. And then we're open. Now we're closed. Now we're open. We're doing a show. Oh, it's rubbish, because there's no one there. What does that mean? And you just weren't. And I think this is the first year where it's felt like a pre-COVID year. And we're going into planning next year. And, I've kind of never been more excited about the product.
Yeah, great.
You probably tell from my tone of voice, but I'm so pumped about what we've got coming. The Kings of War book was brilliant. It was a really good piece of work by the RC. Pulled everything together. Matt delivered it. We've got it out there. It's in French now. It's in Spanish now. It's in German now. We were at Essen last week. Kings of War's in German. Suddenly, people that prior would walk past because they don't speak English, because we're in Germany at a German show, is stopping and going, I've heard about this. Tell me more. If they have heard about this, can't you tell me more, please?
What is this theatre of war?
Yeah, that's
right.
You spoke about creativity and things, and the next 12 months. We've got the question on the screen here. Have you got a hint of, because obviously as far as the book goes, I know you're leaving it on the new app for a little while until you get closer. You got any hints on where you're taking Twilight Kin? Yeah,
so what we started doing is what is it? What's going on? And one of the things that we invented, Matt invented with Fevered and Dark Soul, was the Night Stalkers, which came out during Vanguard. And that's what we're saying, there's a lot of positives that came out of here. And this whole, and then the Void. And then we started saying, well, let's talk more about the Void and interacting and dancing. And if you're a little bit dark, a little bit twisted, you're attracted to the dark things and the dark side. Well, how about these guys go in there and they start messing around in there and this starts affecting them and it starts getting inside their blood and their bones and their spirit. What about if they're actually slave drivers? Because that's quite powerful, but they go into the Void to get Night Stalkers and bring them out to be their cannon fodder and their chaff. But actually, they then also find certain ones that they want as their pets. And pets, like Rottweilers and Pit Bulls, fighting pets. But the longer you stay, the more affected you get. And so you get these eternal, elven, dark-souled people spending longer and longer and longer in the Void, doing goodness knows what in a goodness knows what way. And how does that affect them? And what does it mean to them? And oh my God, let's start concepting that. Okay. And, I like the idea of them. Think Marilyn Manson on 10 foot, 12 foot tall, walked even more slightly weird looking, and then start playing around with that in whole numbers of ways. Chains, leathers, Night Stalkers sat on their shoulders and around them and around their feet. And you're about halfway there.
Yeah, so we might see something like a unit range where, the different units might be how much or how little they've been affected so far by the Void.
It could be. And it might be that the army that fights could, and it could be just the stuff that's been in there for ages. Because, there might be a lot of them, not of them. And that's where it's early stages. I don't know how it's going to play out, but don't expect 6 foot tall spearmen.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. We're just miles away from there. And that's when I looked and started talking about I was getting super pumped, and I said, you can't put this in the book. It's all written, it's all there, that's what it's on the app. So we can't, because if someone runs out and buys that army and we put it in a book, and then I have to turn up in 6 months' time and say, yeah, throw that in the bin. We haven't got that. And I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case. It might just be, well, you can use it, but you're going to add this, or it could just look totally different. So I realised we were going on a long, long, long way. Empire of Dust, it's dry skeletons. It's a bit more, and we'd also done them in metal. What we added was the cool, funky stuff. This was going to be very different because I thought we really wanted to do something unique and exciting and wow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Halflings, we did that brilliantly with the Halflings. Here's the Iron Pig, here's the Grenadiers, here's the guys on the back of their troll harvesters. How cool is that? And I thought the RC and the sculpting team nailed it.
Yeah. I think they've done a cracking job there. And I think the only reason we haven't seen more on the table is everyone's still building them. I know for Clash of Kings Australia next year, there's about, I reckon we're up to 6 people building armies who are already signed up, who will all bring halflings. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that is currently one of your highest selling armies.
It's been brilliant. And it's a great, perfect, one of those classic, great hobby, great business things. We spent the money on the plastics. The money came back. We were able to spend it again. It was very creative. I think it became halflings until that point had always been, in all fantasy, you've got a kettle on your head and you've got your pans and your dustbin lids. And I said, we are not doing that in plastic. There's just no way. They're an army. We're turning up to fight. What are they going to be and how are they going to be a force? Because just a lot of little teeny fast dogs charging around, biting you. Okay, and now get your Iron Pigs. They just use anything they can to get in there, and the charm of this army is it's kind of crazy. Balloons, rocket launchers, semi-technical, technological, but with a whole heap of kind of irreverence, goblin-esque irreverence.
Yeah. No, I think it's cracking. We'll take a slight diversion before we come back to some army stuff, but we've already talked about the app, right? And the app being, I think, my understanding is that it's going to be a number of things, right? What can you tell us about the app, which I'm assuming will launch?
Rob Berman's not here, so he doesn't have a handler. So
that's right. I'm off the leash. Well, I'm supposed to be filming a video on this in the next couple of days, so what you're getting is a world exclusive. The app's a fantastic website. We are going to have. We've been working with Greg over at Easy Army, and he's great, but it's not his full-time thing. You've got other gigs, and then we've got. So first and foremost, it's an army builder. That's the cornerstone of it. It's an army builder. You'll get a couple of free armies if you're not subscribed. You'll obviously get infinite if you're subscribed. Then what? Okay, so then you've got every army. It's always updated because we're working on it. We'll have the book. So on the day the book goes live, the app has all the information. Next, Math Hammer. You've got all of your Math Hammer. This unit fights this. You can expect this many hits. You've got those stats. So when you're building your army, you can start being a bit more scientific about it, which is very good for people like me because I don't understand any of those type of things. I know they exist. And then anyway, for me, I can phone Kyle up and say, just send me an army list and tell me how it plays, and then leave the back page on the printer and forget to actually read it and get beaten. But anyway, not everyone else has that facility of calling the Kyle. So so your Math Hammer allows you to start tinkering with it. It's got tournament organizing stuff. So we know there's some out there, but it's also, we forget because Matt, I know you run them and Rob, you've been at many. The people are just getting started and there's 10 of them and they want to just run a little tournament. And you say, look, here's my subscription, put your army list in, send it to me, and then I can just run a tournament for you. And you can play, 4v4 and it'll all do it for you and click. So there's a whole heap of functionality there that just allows us to bring all that into one place. What's nice is we can then say, hey guys, if you've got a Mantic army and you're running a tournament, have some tournament support, and some of that data's coming back in about who's using what and what's going on. And I don't really understand data, but I've read and heard it's very important. So we'll have some of it. And people cleverer than me.
Companies use it.
Yeah, correct. People cleverer than me. I think as much for the rules as the business. I think, I think on paper it all sounds very clever, and you can do all these things in real time. And I have no idea what that means. But if you make cool models, people buy them. But I think they can, when they come to run, what's the stat line, or is it something OP? Why is it always getting picked and things like that? We can have a look. So yeah, I think so. Those are some of the things it's going to have from day one. You can either just go, I'm only interested in Kings of War. I'll just take a Kings of War app subscription, or and the living rulebook. It'll have the living rulebook. So if we have FAQs, in you go. There it is. So it's bang up to date. It's all active search as well. So because it's built into some clever sci-fi way, if you search the word, it'll give you all the ways you can find it. So it's not a PDF. It's built in that way. And Dead Zone and Firefight. So you've got proper army lists and army building for all of those, tournament for all of those. And so everything all in one place, all on your phone, all on your laptop. And Armada will be coming in the new year.
Okay. Yeah. So this is more of a way of bringing it all under the official Mantic banner as well.
Yeah, and polishing it up, and making it slicker and better, and someone that's working on it 3 days a week all the time.
Yeah, Gad makes a comment here. I mean, I think Elliot has signaled it on his website. He's got a banner saying, that his is going down and it's moving. But essentially, you're taking a cleaner version of his product, right? He's done some work on it, and he's
done tons of work in the background. Yeah. It's going to look very different. Elliot's joined us. He's a good coder. He's he's great at what he does. He loves what we're doing, and he's going to help us. He's savant on that kind of stuff. So yes, mode, it's very similar to that, but way better with lots more functionality. Everything that's been building for the last 3 months, and we've left that up because if you're playing and if you're using that at the moment, it would be a bit rotten if we took it down just as you were off to a tournament or something. So.
So it sounds like we'll see a phasing out of Easy Army into this.
Yeah, in fairness, Greg has been brilliant and he's lovely. And we said, well, we could, absolutely, we'll support you, Greg. You've got these subscriptions and everything else. And he went, listen, it's a whole heap of work and you've got your own thing. And I can see you can spend more time doing it. Let's just migrate everybody over. So quite quickly.
There will be a migration, will there?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, we can't make people do anything they don't want to do. But I think we'd love people that are on that monthly to jump over. We're going to give you some time free so that you get to play with it. So even if you keep your Easy Army, but I think Easy Army will date quite quickly. I think the new stuff's up there, but whenever the next book comes out, is Greg going to want to spend hours and hours and hours and hours going through, finding all the changes, putting all the changes, getting them all in. And ours have already been done months before. So hopefully people will move across. That's certainly the intention. And the more the better, because the more we're on one platform, the more you can compare army lists, send them here. We ran Clash of Kings on the tournament software last week, which was really good, worked well. Elliot learned a lot from it. There was a whole load of when the rubber hits the road feedback, and I'm sure there'll be more. And we've got things like, that allow us to throw rankings up. Who's the best Goblin player in the UK that's been to our tournaments, that's used the tournament order? So it's not going to be the rankings because other people use other software at the moment. But over time, it would be great fun if it was good enough that actually it was used at the Clash of Kings Oz and the Clash of Kings UK, and then you start getting this playoff of who's the best Goblin player in the world. Who's the best dwarf player in the world? Who's the best Night Stalker player? Who's the best, Halfling player? What's the favourite unit? What's the, who's been picked at the most times? So there'll be a kind of fun database that we can dip into and hobby, hey, here's the top 10 army lists, or as voted by you, here's the army list. Which ones do you like best? We can have some fun with it. You guys can dive into it and have a look at it.
Well, I guess it gives you that more real-time feedback to your audience, doesn't it? And I mean, the benefit of the more people that subscribe is the more sustainable and the better it can become, right?
Correct, absolutely, and it's a feed the beast kind of situation, and a few quid, 3 or 4 quid, but very cheap to have them all. We've unashamedly incentivized you to give us a couple more quid and have all our games, so that when you're in the ecosphere for £2 a month to less than $2 these days at the current exchange rate and the shit show that is the English pound.
It's still $10 Australian, mate. So
yeah, it's not our fault here. And it will just be, look, because also when we're doing something Dead Zone, we want to show it off. We want to talk about it. We're doing a Dead Zone campaign, and if you like Kings of War, you're going to love Firefight because you're going to love the cleanness. You're going to love the fastness. And there's a lot of people that were, picked up Firefight, having never played any of our sci-fi games, and went, this is pretty sweet. This is good fun. And there's quite a lot of that building on that. So we want you kind of in so we can talk to you and keep investing in it and keep making it better. And I think, I don't want to take too much, but I've got some pretty bonkers ideas for things we can do. And I think some of them are going to be pretty wowsy. So,
I think it's a good direction to go in, and particularly that living rule book. I mean, I think that's a big sell, particularly if you put it on the subscription only. That's a big sell for the subscription. I think is that living rule book. Yeah, absolutely.
And we could actually get we can hint at some of the pre-published stuff happen. You can get early access inside the app to some of the things that might be in the book later on the year. So I think with the Halfling army, if you remember, we put that out. Well, if we wanted to do that in the future, you could have that inside. Here you go. Look at this. Have a play around with this. I don't know. It allows us to do cool things. And I think right now we're focused on releasing it well, making sure it's not buggy, making sure that if there is anything wrong with it, we fix it in your free period, so that by the time we ask you to say, look, can you give us a few quid? People go, yeah, absolutely. It's a great app, and I'm happy to do that.
What's the timetable for the digital version of the book? Obviously, the big one's shipping a month. Okay.
Yeah. We're going to ship in the new one. I think you're probably shipping today, tomorrow. Yesterday we started shipping. So by the end of next week, everything should be shipped physically. We want to let the stores have it so that stores that have pre-ordered it don't get gazumped by an electronic version. I think people have made the choice whether they're having paper, electronic, or both already. But it doesn't feel good for a store for someone to come in and go, look, I've already got it. Well, thanks. Why did I bother buying it? So we'll give them a week or two. We'll make sure they're all shipped, also on the shelves. Everyone's got a chance to get it paper-wise. And by far, we sell far, far more print versions than we do digital. It's a factor of 100. But there's others that like it because of the having it digitally, being able to carry it around with you. The rule book, you read it. So yeah, a month, and I think we're going with the app on 1st November.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Only a couple of weeks away.
Yeah. So it's going there, so it'll be up and running and getting feedback. It's quite a good time because we've almost just got to the end of the gaming season. And we've got a couple of months to make sure anything that's not quite right gets worked on and make sure it's right for it's January. Let's go again.
And I do have to say, Ronnie, kudos to Elliot. I've talked to him a bit recently, and he's always been very open to feedback. Whether it's I'm already doing this. Oh no, I haven't thought of that. What does this do? And so definitely.
Yeah, well, that's your feedback. Thank you. And we definitely have that January, early February time to make sure that anything that when the rubber hits the road doesn't quite work, Elliot can work on it. And he's going to do a nice thing there. So.
With the book being released, what are we looking for next year? Are you going back to the model of there's going to be a separate Clash of Kings next year, or are you just
probably later in the year, but we don't know what the app means. The app means we don't have to. I mean, I think we will because I think it's a nice getting a book in your hands and sitting there and reading it with a cup of coffee on a Sunday morning is quite joyous. I think the app is more functional than a pleasure. But yeah, I think there's certainly no Kings of War print planned until this time next year. Yeah. But I think by next year there will be. Matt was telling me, and I'm not going to tell you, and I've forgotten anyway. But they're working on something cool, and then that allows to. Oh, I know what it is now. Yeah, I'm still not saying. But it's cool. But yeah, a year from now we'll have a Twilight Kin will be launching, and the book will be coming out, and I think we'll do a whole section on the Void and magic and what that looks like, because it'll tie into all the Twilight Kins and the Night Stalkers, who are also getting new plastics.
Awesome.
So it's going to be a kind of three-way scrap between Northern Alliance, Night Stalkers, and Twilight Kin. The story of next year.
Well, you talked about the future being super exciting for Kings of War. Is it more exciting to be a fan of Kings of War or a fan of Man City?
Well, Kings of War, because Man City is it's a given. We're going to win the league. One of them will European Cups, and we'll get knocked out in the later stages of the European Cup as every single bloody year we do. Pep picks his bizarre team, or Real Madrid decide they're not going to lay down and die. So, yeah.
Well, let's get in. Let's talk about some of these armies. We get lots of questions. Before we get to that, though, I got to ask you, what's up with historicals? We get asked that all the time. When's the historical book coming out? So give me your stock patented answer.
Yeah, sorry. It's one of those things that it kind of, with the 3.5 and everything else, just got lost. And then it kind of came up, and it seems like everyone wants it. If you want it, I'll do it. If everyone wants a historicals book, it's not hard. I'll just go and make it happen. Should we start a poll or something?
Yeah, I think on the Mantic website, start a poll and see if there's enough people that have interest to make it economically justifiable to pull it out.
Well, I mean, one thing there though
is kind of one of those things that hardcore fans that have a bent to write rules want to write it. We've already got the army list from the last time round, so they just need rebalancing and relooking at. So if we're excited for it and it makes sense, then I suppose it's not.
Well, I guess that's something the app can give you, right? Is that real-time, again, data, even though you might not know what it does, Ronnie, but that it can, you could do some sort of real-time poll via your subscribers who already showed by being subscribed that they're Mantic engaged. So, yeah. Well, and Steve Hildry go stuff yourself, mate.
That's exactly why.
But I do love him.
That's right. Well, let's get into talk about some of these armies. This is just one of many, many comments about elves. Any elf love coming? I mean, obviously Twilight Kin we talked at length about, but what about regular vanilla elves? You got anything coming or thinking about?
I'm just trying to. So, in fairness, Matt is hassling me on dwarves and elves because he wants to get rid of the figures within the round bases. And at the moment, I'm being quite stubborn and saying, look, let's finish off the armies we've got. We've got kind of three things we need to do. We need to complete out the armies that we have. And one of the things that Kyle often says to me is, Ron, I really want to build a Trident Realm army, but I can't. There isn't models in some of the ranges. Those that there are in resin, but I need hordes of them, and therefore they're 120 UK pounds. Now $100 US and 4,952 Aussie dollars. So that it just doesn't quite work, and therefore we have to go. Okay, so let's pick 6 and make sure they are perfectly fit for purpose. They play well, they look well, everything is available for them, everything is available in the right kind of format, and let's finish those off. And those are the 6 that I've obviously instantly forgotten. But we talked about anything Dwarf Hammer. And then you've got so there's that kind of that, and I think that's the short-term wins. Is the Halflings are all but finished. If they're not, let's finish them. I think they're done. Empire of Dusk was complete. Northern Alliance is complete, but we've got a bit in PVC. There's a pit that don't quite work. Okay, and we've invented a new unit for them, which is super cool, which might have dwarfs on it. So there's the answer to that question. Might be very free dwarfy. Kind of, just different.
It's got wings. I saw it. He's got wings, so it's got to be some kind of. Maybe it's a bat or a bird.
Yeah,
Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Is it a dwarf?
Direct misfire doesn't get these leaks.
No.
Yeah.
Well, they don't get up at 5:30. That's the problem.
I'm on them next. I've saved the good stuff for them. So, so dwarves, we'll get some love that way. And then I think we will be going through our legacy armies, our old legacy armies. But we've got to, again, I think when we go back to dwarves, we go free dwarves are going this way, imperial dwarves are going that way. And I think, I was looking at the dwarf clansmen from the Northern Alliance army, and they felt far more like free dwarfs to me than the ones that are currently So we've got to be clever and then go, okay, well, can we make the sprue free dwarfs with round shields and wooden shields and heavy armor, but a kind of more mountain feel, and the imperial dwarfs far more tabards and triangular shields, or should it just be two different sprues? It might be slightly
one of them.
dwarfed, but if we can have more dwarfs,
I mean, why can't we just get rid of the imperial dwarves? The free dwarves uprise, they wipe out Gallic and the whole kit and caboodle.
The whole goddamn lot of them. Yeah, well, I painted an army, that's why. And they're looking very imperial dwarf.
Just needs a new general. Just needs a new general that subjugated the rest.
That's right. Now they're free. Now they're
free to do what they want at any old time. Love them. So it's like, and again with the elves, how can we really make sure that this time they're not Marmite? Everyone goes, wow, we can see what you're trying to do, and you've done it. And I think if you go in detail and people that have painted that.
I mean, I guess from a marketing point of view, it's a space that already has a lot of work, isn't it? So it would be hard to be unique. Like there's other ranges, there's heaps of STL ranges for resin printing. I'd imagine, like when I think about that, I think about, well, for Mantic, it would be really hard to put something out that go, well, this is so different, you should buy ours,
Yeah, well, and also the stepping off point for the stepping in point into Panithor was in old days we used to be humans. It's now elves, dwarfs, and goblins. But what we've then done with each one of those is we've gone, hey, dwarfs ride Brocks, and they go around with steel behemoths, and they've got guys that fire, flamethrowers from their mech suits. So we've kind of taken the standard trope and just evolved it. But when we were writing the first and second editions of Kings of War, it was only dwarfs, elves, goblins, orcs. We were very vanilla. Abyssal dwarfs was probably as furthest as we'd gone. Then we did a Basileans and Abyssals, which was red versus white, good versus bad. We started to spread our wings. But now the stuff that's really exciting is Northern Alliance, is Night Stalkers, is our take on Twilight Kin. But if you try to do that to elves in a standard way, well, they're no longer stepping on point then. And they're no longer really elves, because we all know what elves are because we've been brought up with them. They're tall, haughty, arrogant, pointy-eared, not as good as dwarfs. That's what they are. So I think we have to honour the starting points and then push them in our direction. But the things that are really becoming what Panithor's about, the magic is all about nature and the earth elementals, the stone elementals, the water elementals, the naiads, the Trident Realms. Trident Realms coming to Man of War, Kings of Armada next year. So yes, so it's that stuff that, and like with the old world, it started as Tolkien, and then it evolved, and it's the evolution stuff that's the exciting stuff. It was then, in it.
Do you see you embracing a way that you could easily fill out armies like Trident Realms? Like, because there's not heaps missing from Trident Realms, right?
No, and so interestingly, when we were talking last week, we went and saw this toolmaker. He's got some new ways of doing it. We're looking at it. This is one of the dilemmas. I'm just letting you inside, behind the curtain here. But you go, right, Trident Realms. It's one of ours. We've got the naiads. They're really unique and good fun. And they're a great, modeling hobby thingies. You can put water around their feet with the resin. That's cool. And there's nothing else really like it in the way that it fights. And And then you go, let's add River Guard and Pachyderms. Pachyderms everyone loves. River Guard are super cool. They're a pain in the ass in metal. And now what you've got is more infantry. We've done them, but you know what? Everyone hates building and painting. What you want is crabs and things with howdahs on things of crabs of guns on. And so what you've got to be very careful you don't do is complete out the army in a worthy way that everyone goes, yeah, I don't want to. They look great, but no, that's 300 troops. So we've got to be able to come at it and go, right, we're going to add those troops, but we're also going to add this cool, crazy thing. That's going to mean you go, holy shit, I have to have this army. And then you paint that, and because you go out and you bought the army, you start gluing the other bits together, and before you know, you've moved it on a bit. And it's a journey. I think the thing is, like you said with Halflings, there's lots of people have them, but the journey between buying that box set and being tournament ready, not even building it, painting it, because then you need to play it 10 times. Because you're going to go to Clash and I want to do pretty well. So, if you're 6 weeks away and you're still only half built, you might be finishing painting it the night before, or you might think, screw it, I'm going to take my goblins because I know how they play. I'm actually just going to add that wing slasher to it with a howdah. I'm going to add that. I'm going to add a giant to it, and I've done those 2 paint jobs, and I know how they play, and I'll play 2 games with my buddy. And I've worked my units out, and then I can have a good weekend where I don't have to think too hard, and I can just drink beer.
Something you said earlier, Ronnie, was you're going to circle back, and you're really going to focus on filling out the ranges for your established armies. A topic that gives lots of consternation out there, which is army consolidation. Right? We've talked about it at length. Oh, there's too many armies. Is 20 armies too many? Like what's the owner of Mantic? What's their take?
Yes, too many, and yes, too few. He's one of those kind of same. Does the free dwarfs, imperial dwarfs narrative start creating cool dynamics in our minds and start creating the story of Panithor? Yes. Whereas actually prior to that, there was imperial dwarfs and it was just dwarfs. They were kind of dwarfs. Does the putting the Brotherhood and breaking it apart and putting it as part of the Green Lady, and then others that are kind of mercenaries working for the Basileans to fight against the Abyss because they don't want to do the dirty work themselves. All of this starts to create narratives, and a Vanguard faction of Brotherhood that are kind of slightly down at heel, haughty knights that can no longer, the equipment's getting slightly shabby, but they've still got that kind of luster of brilliance about them. I mean, what a Vanguard unit that'd make, a faction of a couple of guys on the horses, and the retinue behind them carrying their stuff with them, and kind of going into. So, I think it's one of the things I'm mildly in favour of is kind of all armies are equal, but we're going to make some more equal than others. And they can it up.
Well, I actually think Night Stalkers is a perfect example of that, right? I mean, they've had to knock them slightly on the head with this new book, but, it is probably the best playing army in Kings of War. And like, I don't think that's a bad thing for something that you make basically the whole range for. So
we made the whole range.
I don't think anyone could. You're not doing it to a level like some other manufacturers where in a month there'll be something
it's
bigger.
Not
and better.
Destroying the game, but it's an easy army to paint. You can get it together. We've got new plastics coming in to replace the butchers and the guys. It's all plastics, so they can then get their ambush set. And it's. I played a couple of games of Kings of War with my old Dwarf Elf Empire army. I love it. What should I do? Well, do Night Stalkers. You'll be competitive. They're easy to paint. They're a nice range. They've got a great storyline behind them. Oh yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Butchers, I think, is the word you're looking for. Butchers. Butchers.
Butcher.
The Night Stalker butchers. Yeah.
Butchers, you got those. What league ones?
Yeah.
Raptors.
Oh, yeah. Look, mate, at least you've started calling them Night Stalkers. So
yeah, I was like, when are we gonna, where are the night crawlers?
They might come back yet. It's a new army.
Yeah.
So another thing you touched on was going back and trying to get rid of the old style model that had the integrated round base. So Aramis, one of the questions he said, "Hey, when are we going to get new basing?" You know, he hopes that at some point you just go with, you know, maybe give unit basing or at least just MDF squares. I guess you could talk to this, but I mean, if you get rid of the some of those old units that have those integrated basing, then you don't need those special bases anymore, and maybe that's
so actually, so the ambush sets, because all of them are going to be new plastic, so that none of them have the penny base, will come with MDF at this point, unit bases. But one of the things I'd love to do, and I don't quite know how to make it yet, but why not unit bases with texture already on them? Wouldn't that be cool? Can we tool that? And that's something that I think at some point we can say, hey, buy an army deal. You're never going to, I've talked about it. It's kind of old hat now about that journey from the 20 mil base to gluing 10, 20 mil bases onto a 200 by, 40 to why am I doing that? Let's make a beautiful base and stick my figures on it. And when I did my dwarf armies, I'm sure you guys have done, I spent ages clipping all of the, thingies off them and then gluing them down. So we've got that bit out. I think
the textured base decreases the barrier to entry just again, doesn't it? It's like, we can make
glue it down, be done with it.
And not as artistic as maybe some people, but here's something that's going to look really nice. Go.
Yeah.
The thing that makes the armies look beautiful at Clash, there was it was brilliant. At Clash last couple of weeks ago, almost all the armies were Mantic, which was brilliant. It was that kind of nudge direction that people have picked up on. And I've always said, it takes 2 years from starting it to having it Clash ready, And they've done it. They wanted to win the prize. They also just wanted to show it off, and they were there. And there was 4 beautiful, themed, well-painted armies. The Night Stalkers, Crawlers in the house. I don't know if you saw that one. I'm sure you saw that one, which was just gorgeous, very thematic.
Yeah, Matt's army looked really awesome. Yeah,
Matt, it was just amazing, wasn't it? Yeah. Steve Hildrew's really strong themed.
We don't compliment Steve here.
Sorry, actually, purple on orcs. What's he thinking? Ridiculous.
I don't know.
Terrible. Anyway, he lost. Matt was much better. We then had who's the other guy, and he always does a really beautiful army every year. His was really good. Oh, I've got the picture of that. And John Greener brought his own from the US. That was really nice. And then there was one that broke my heart because it was really nice. It was beautifully painted. He had these trees with lichen on them, but it wasn't Mantic models. I was like, that's lovely, but it's dead to me. So, so anything that we can do, because but you know what they all had in common? Their bases and the color schemes made them armies.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't know if Kyle's listening. If you're listening, Kyle, you should be on the phone selling Mantic models to people. What you're doing, unless you're doing it later, in which case, excellent. But he stood in my office last week when he was over, and he looked and he went, This dwarf army, is this yours? I said, yeah. Did you paint it? I said, yeah. Said, quite nice. So it was the incredulity.
Yeah.
But what made it nice is not my painting skills by any stretch, because, I built the base, I glued the models, I glued them on the base, I sprayed it black, and I painted what you could see. But what brought it together was bases broke the line. They had a strong theme, and they had a colour scheme. And, if he picked any one of them up, he'd have probably vomited in his own mouth.
Yeah. I'm going with that tactic now, actually. I do the base coats, and then I'm gluing them onto the base and only highlighting the bits I can get to.
Yeah,
because base coat the whole model, but just highlight what you can see.
Yeah. And I think what you then get, particularly if you ink and wash, quite grimy, I'm literally that's him, is it? And horrible pink and purple, and it was reinforces the thematic, because that's all you can do, because you can't get distracted by starting painting their inner thighs.
Yeah. You did say it takes 2 hours or 2 years to get an army table ready. I think that means you have not met Jeremy, our co-host. Because I think he's more of a 6-year kind of guy.
Who did send us a message? He wants to be Mantic's official Hugs ambassador, just so you know. So if you ever have a role for a Hugs ambassador, that's what Jeremy wants.
Yeah. Oh, what? Sorry?
A Mantic Hugs ambassador. I know. It sounds weird, but it's his words.
Right. So he's
from California, so
he loves the hugs. Bring it on in there. Yeah. We like him. He's a lovely man.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about old armies. I would be remiss if I didn't ask what 50,000 people are asking. Is Amphibians still on your radar somewhere? I know we got 28 armies. We don't really have room for new, but Amphibians, are they somewhere in Ronnie's head?
Well, you will when you kill off elves completely.
Yeah, they're past Ronnie's head. They're in Matt's head.
Okay.
Absolutely, yes. And another, and Matt's got the name, but I can't even pronounce it, army. And that's why we want to kind of work on this thematic that allows you to go, here's this army and here's this king that allows you to unlock this range. But the continuation of what we've started with the Halflings, what we've done with the Night Stalkers, what we've done with Northern Alliance, every iteration we want to move the world and open up the map. And so at some point in the medium distant future, a whole other section of the map is going to reveal itself and the people that live there.
Yeah. Okay. Now we've got this really good comment, Ronnie, which is kind of counter to some of the discussions we've had, in that we've got a 3D enthusiast who's gone backwards because he loved the Riftforge Orc so much.
Yeah.
It's a frequent topic for us and a discussion point. And like I had said to you, we did a bit of a poll and lots of people are using it. Does Mantic have any plans to embrace 3D printing in any form?
Well, yes, we do. I think there's two things that we could see it doing. We were talking about those units earlier that were hugely expensive, because what we do is we're taking a plastic kit, adding a whole chunk of resin to it. You then need 20 different, and I'd say, well, 3 heads on the front rank is fine. And everyone goes, no, if you're going to make them look different, you think, no, you're right, you do. So then you need 20 weapons, 20 heads. It's fiddly as hell. And then you want a horde of them, and we sell them in regiments or troops. So you need 40, and they're 30 quid each, because it's £25, and £5 for the resin. And believe me, we're losing money on the resin. I mean, we won't believe it. But I don't know if you saw my video about the ogres the other week, where the machine was running and it dropped off. I'm going to do one of those for resin. Many things will make a lot of sense, because instead of me being able to stand here and move to there, and in that time we've got 10 ogre sprues, I'm going to have to walk all the way around Mantic HQ twice and interview 6 different people, and people will then go, okay. So those type of things I'd love to see, where we go, hey, look, here's your left arm and your right arm and your head. And if you're old like me, you just pay some money and someone goes away and casts it for you in a dark and dungy room, and you send it to me. But if you're young and funky and vibrant 3D printer, so what I want to do is, I can't see a place where you don't want my plastics, because I think it's the boring bit on your printer anyway. It's probably not going to be cheaper. You say, oh, it's totally free. You've got to buy the resin. And once you've run that bed 100 times or 1,000 times, whatever it is, it's going to break, and then you've got to buy it again. But so look, let me do the plastics. Let me bash those out to you. So take your ambush set for 30 quid, 40 quid, whatever it is, for 40 models, so £1 a model. And then if you want to convert a few of those, go print a better STLs, and suddenly you've got your 200 weapon option. You've got cool new heads. I want to put nearly F-bombed, and nearly F-bombed then.
No problem. That's all right.
Okay. I want standard bearers. I know they've got no game thing, but I want standard bearers. They look great. But I still want to put them back in the rules, but it adds complexity, and I'm just old. But for goodness sake, why would we put them on our units? Yeah. Okay, one of the things that gets compromised when you're making a plastic kit, but if you're printing on STLs, here's a load of flags. Whoa, yeah. Freehand painting, it looks magnificent. So I think we're already committed to that. But once you go, look, let's get in here, I think we've got some funky things that we could do that are currently in resin that we could allow you to start printing and saying, look, here's a release this month, your Northern Alliance. Our Snow Trolls are a monopose PVC kit. If you want to go print those, here's a few alternative poses, and on the Northern Alliance kit, I bought the Mega Army, or I bought the ambush set twice, and now I want the conversions and I want the things, and send that over to me.
And I guess, like you say, because of the labor of the resin, that it might actually be more cost effective for some of these resin bits for you to release an STL.
And even if it's not, and there's some that will still want the resin, so we'll do it. But then we're not shipping it around the world. It's more economically viable. It's also more friendly, on the planet, because we're not flying physical products around. So I think we can create a win-win out of there that can help gamers, save air miles, carbon miles, and produce nicer quality kits. There's a couple of Worm Riders that I think we did for the Empire of Dust that were too hard to put even into resin. They were just beautiful models, but uncut-upable because of the way that they've been done, and therefore we couldn't get them into resin. You're damn right we are. That's an STL of Sir Ronnie Renton.
Or a Ronnie the Bard, but in Titan Giant form.
Titan Giant form. Well, of course, when you've got an STL, you can print whatever size you want.
Yeah, that's true.
I definitely think Ronnie the Bard's going in the welcome pack. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah.
And then his heart won't break either.
Well,
so I think we are looking at it, and I think we could also go, further. I think what we'll do is we'll get started, we'll get stuck in. We've got a kind of slightly mad idea that if it might work, I'll come back on and talk about it in Jan or Feb with you. And if that's cool with you, I'll come back and get excited then. Because I think at the moment, we can't see too far past the app, other than the fact the answer is yes, we're going to do some stuff. That definitely we're going to do that army stuff, but I don't think that's going to be enough. I think we'll need to do more.
Yeah. So you'll start dipping the toe in.
Yeah.
Yes.
So one change that was in the book, I love it. I'm not an Allies fan. Allies are optional. What was the impetus for the change?
Simply to so deep down, although I'm obviously a terrible fascist, I'm a real hippie as well. And one of my ideas is, people will build thematic armies, and the dwarfs would, and that's why it's good evil. Good neutral evil is humans will go, ogres will go with dwarf. They'd hire them because they're mercenaries in effect, or humans can be under the spell of a necromancer and or a dwarven king because they've got aligned interests, but necromancers and dwarfs can't get on. But what it ended up allowing in competitive play was, hey, I've got this army, it's brilliant at this and this, but it then has this weakness. I take these allies that remove that weakness. And therefore, I don't like it both because it allows, it's like gamesmanship. But even more, I think it ends up pulling everybody to the middle, which means I like the fact that my armies and my dwarfs are slow. So what's the problem and how do I resolve it? Allies. It's a little bit simplistic and it's a little bit gamey. Of course you're going to do it. And if you go to a tournament, you want to win. If we leave you a great big hole that says, come through here and solve all of your army's weakness, why wouldn't you? So I think just by pushing it away a little bit, it means that when you're playing your legendary battle, and I say, hey, Matt, you've got a human army, I've got a dwarf army, and we want to obviously beat you know, everyone else's crappy, rubbish, evil empire army, let's ally, you can. But when you're turning up to clash, if your army's got a weakness, the rules committee's got it there for a reason, because you've probably also got some pretty powerful things somewhere else.
Okay.
One question that has been asked a few times is that obviously you're moving a bunch of stuff to Poland. That's awesome, hard plastics. Have you looked at the CioCast stuff that's taken the industry by storm? And I know it's proprietary resin and all that stuff. Just talk to us about that.
Yeah, it's going to fit in. So we actually have so CioCast. If you think of metal and resin as a similar type of thing, in as much as mold cost low, production cost high, and no economies of scale. The more you make, the more it's 10p for one, it's 10p for 100, it's 10p for 1,000. Plastics, super high starting cost, but the more volume you get, that gets spread out because the actual shot cost is low. What we're trying to get, particularly with what we talk about the STLs, is if we put the core in here and we can get them all in hard plastics, then it becomes almost uneconomic to print in STL. Why would I? I'll just buy your hard plastics, which drives the volume through, and then I add my conversions, and I add my hero, and I add the other things that aren't viable. And so the space that CioCast would live in, which is a medium tool cost, high production output, might get squeezed out. Or we might design another game that really looks good on CioCast, and we go, okay, well, or a unit type that's not enough for plastic, but it's far too much for resin. It does have some limitations. I think the quality's now got there, but it's taken a while. And the molds are relatively thin. So, for example, our Armada ships would have been a classic example where we didn't know how big Armada was going to be. We didn't want to invest in 8 fleets in hard plastic. But I tell you what, in resin, it stretched our resin team to beyond breaking.
I was going to say it almost broke you.
Yeah. 16 hours a day, 3 months for 3 solid months. So CioCast would have been there. Now, whether the ships would have fitted in it, I don't know. So maybe then we'd have had to shrink the ships or anything else. But there's other things. So on our radar, looking at what the right project would be, and then we'll look at doing it. I don't think the detail's quite as good as resin. And I don't think it's quite as good as a perfect plastic set. But I think the quality now is very solid. And certainly not to be sniffed at and something to be looked at.
Well, let's take a look at let's talk business for a minute. Obviously, you're in a very competitive market. Obviously, you got the big gorillas in the room, but then you've got the smaller companies like Warlord and Infinity, and you got Fantasy Flight with Legion and Atomic Mass Games, and we had a bunch of questions about that. But just kind of give us your perspective of how are you guys doing, and where are you stacking up, and what are you doing well? Where do you need to improve? And how are you going to take that? Hey, last time we talked, you had 27 people. Now you got 28. So you're moving up in the world. So how do you take that next step? How do you take that next step?
Well, yeah, I think we've got to deal with recruitment into Kings of War. I think it did very well through the pandemic because everyone finally got time to actually paint their armies, and start a new army. But I don't think we did any recruiting. I think there was, for universal battles, but all those wonderful events that Matt runs, down at CanCon, it is CanCon, isn't it? That people wander back and go, these guys are having a lot of fun, they're having a lot of noise. What's going on here? Oh, that's Kings of War, mate. That didn't happen for 2 years. So I think we stopped recruiting, and I think what's happened is we've got to double down on that. We've got to really make sure, and that's why Ambush and this book and the app are all enablers to enable us to go, guys, this is a game, you've got to play it, it's great fun. And the US going into the pandemic was absolutely on a tear with Kings of War. It was ripping it up, people coming up going, I've heard of this, I want to get into it. I've got an Warhammer army. I want to give it a try. I've got these 3 rules. It was going there. And I think that's just lulled off. We've just got to get that momentum back. I'm hoping the book app and Ambush will be a galvanizing effect for that. He who shall not be named, Steve, is probably going to pick up and start handling the Clash of Kings UK for us, because I love what Matt's doing over there. And I love the US tournament scene, although I wish they'd all play with some more Mantic armies. But I love the fact that it's very vibrant. They're getting on with it. They're there, and we can dip in and help, but it's running itself and getting on with it. And I think in some ways that great flights between the US, UK was good fun, and we could get involved, but it also meant that the tournaments weren't all they were supposed to be, because we don't have full-time tournament organisers, and actually there's a lot of very clever, obviously I'm not talking about Steve here, but a lot of clever people out there in the world who can make that fantastic, and then we can come along and sprinkle some fairy dust. But the heavy lifting.
So focus on the stuff that's really in your wheelhouse, basically.
Correct. And I think that's coming out of the pandemic. We've got a few fun licensed things and Mantic board games. We've got such cool connections now that we're getting licenses. We go, we need to make a game of that. It's not a war game. It's not a forever project. But, we've got Streets of Rage. We have to do it. It's got to be cool.
Right. Ooh, heard it here.
How can we not do that?
So that's the next one, is it? That's post Umbrella Academy.
Yeah. It's down the line. We've got as far as Japan at the moment, so we've kind of agreed we're doing it. We've got a cool game, and then we've got it to Japan, and they've said, right, we need to understand what's going on here. We're like, well, it's a board game. What, like Monopoly? No, not like Monopoly. It's got miniature. What? Like,
that's right.
So I've got a lot of work to do there, but I think once they get it and they realise that it's going to be, it's just cool, kind of scroll on 1980s, punch them up. The game you play in the evening, Friday night before or while you're drinking beer, light, fun card games. And we've got a few of those. We've got some of them are really cool, iconic stuff from our youth that I just can't wait to get out. And we just need to kind of get back on that.
Well, and things like running the tournaments take away from that.
We've done Dead Zone. We've got Firefight. They're all very, very good. I need to kind of complete out the plan. And, we're going to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds next year supporting those 3 game systems, So Matt needs to have a good run at them and time to do them, and, making sure people are super excited and super pumped so that they can go get them.
So dwarves have flyers in Armada.
Yeah.
You're going to see them in other systems like Kings of War?
Well, but except your comment was specifically for Northern Alliance, Ronnie. Are you giving us a hint that it might go swing between armies?
Well, that's what I think. So when we invented it, it was... So, I'll tell you through the process here, but we looked at because the Northern Alliance are all of the rejects of the dwarf, elf, and human
bunch
race.
Of losers, basically. Yeah. Bunch of losers, basically.
Bunch of losers. Yes, okay. Yeah. That's one take on it, Matthew. And thank you for your contribution. Not quite what we're looking for at this time. But then we looked. We thought, actually, if we did a hard plastic sprue with the half elves and the berserker, that's got a thematic. And actually, if the humans are the clansmen, when they go out to fight, the kind of steady eddies, soak up the damage, stand there in the middle, stab things with their spears, that feels kind of human-y. And then the elves would be the kind of ninja killer diving in, double daggers, firing bows, running around, making a real mess of you while you can't really engage with them. That feels kind of elven. What would be dwarven? Flying? No. But anyway, somehow we decided to put dwarfs on birds because crows and that was kind of cool. So that's where we played around with. And I thought, well, actually, wouldn't that make a really cool, visually interesting diorama vignette? Okay, yeah, right. Let's see where we can go with this. So suddenly this army's got its troops that are its main bulk and some fun with the heavy cavalry, with all the other things. What a wonderful army. It feels very thematic. It kind of harks back to where they're living and how they are. And then let's really make sure it's fun to play. It's a first among equals army, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if we've got dwarves on crows, why wouldn't we put them in the free dwarves? So
fair.
Well, given that the Imperial dwarves won't exist, it may as well be the free dwarves.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're locked in their minds.
So,
so Ronnie, we have all these games now. We have Dungeon Saga, and we have Vanguard, and we have Ambush. We've got Armada. We've got Siege Rules. When are we going to have that? I dare say it, General's Compendium that ties it all together in a big campaign.
Okay, yes. So we tried this. I mean, we did a bit of that this summer with the Armada angle on the summer campaign. What do you? So I mean, General's Compendium was written by the US studio. It was a great product. It was one of the few products ever that wasn't made. It
was great. It was awesome. Yeah, it was really good.
And I hark back to it. I do like it. We seem to have a thought in the office, and I don't know if this is true or not, that people only pay for rules. You know, so Halpy's Rift versus Clash of Kings.
You know, that's a discussion we're having a lot recently is, Kings of War is only a competitive game. And I disagree. There's a ton of people out there. They're all about their narrative. They don't care about wins and losses. They just want to show up and just throw a bucket load of dice and wipe filthy whatever off the table. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I think
unless that was an option for a digital only release. I mean,
but interestingly, it's not a lot less work because if you have to format it, lay it out, PDF, you may as well print anything. But it's the creative work that goes into it and the management time that it'll take Matt to pull it together, and then so it's that. And it's interesting because people say, we want the narrative. But when you write background, it can very quickly become a bit of a history book, a bit boring. And actually, the far more memorable narratives is just creating cool armies like the Northern Alliance and then putting them into settings. And then your brain starts putting stories together. And then if you get a summer campaign that people play in that strongly, and what we did in the past, we ended up going, here's a cool story. How do we force everyone else into it? And what having a first among equals armies might allow us to do is almost give everyone a year's notice that says, get one of these 6. Get into one of these. Here's the heroes that you can ally with these for fun, but come join us. But we can't do everything for everybody on every army. We're going to look at the East. We're going to look at the West. We're going to look at the boats. It's how do we get the stories evolving? Because I like the fact that our world progresses every time we do a new book, and the abyss breaks. If it loses, it gets smaller. If it wins, it gets bigger. It's on the map next time you get the book, and I love that. It's how do we get more stories? How do we get more Grom and Teclis and Tyrians in there? And I don't think I've got an answer to that one at the moment yet. If answers on a postcard, please PM me. Because we've got all the Celestians, we've got the 2,000 years of history, but it's now where the heroes are made. It's this point. It's that Vanguard game. It's your dungeon sagas that you play, with your kids. Watch this space. For that creates the stories that live with you and resonate with you.
So we've focused a fair bit on Kings of War, Ronnie, and like before, we start to look towards, I don't know how long we've got you for, but Firefight's obviously been a very successful release for you guys. What's in the future for Firefight?
Well, I mean, I'm just looking here on the camera.
What's that? You're showing a tip of something. That's a nice
Get
tip.
excited?
Yeah.
Excited. All right. So you said it was 5 minutes. So look, I mean, it's a full handful. So we've actually been the thing that I'm just working. You're getting not quite a global exclusive because I've shown it, but I'm not digitally enhanced it yet. This is the first digital. we're going to do trees. I've never been so excited about trees in my whole life.
Trees, very nice.
Because what I've realised is that, and I've done it for years, and everybody does it, we have these beautifully painted armies. We spend hours and hours and thousands of tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars building them. We often now have really quite nice neoprene mats, which sometimes have some nice buildings, maybe from 3 different suppliers that are all different shapes and sizes. And then we go and get a couple of railway trees.
Right.
Right? Fucking railway trees.
Yeah.
That look like nothing else that's on the map. Doesn't look like any of the armies. Looks like you're in the Cotswolds, you know? Looks like you're in the Lake District. And that's the fantasy world we're living, is it?
Yeah.
And
so this is your fantasy wood.
Sci-fi, fantasy.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you through.
Yeah, definitely very alien looking. It's cool. I like it. It's
and you can put water running down it. You can paint it different ways. This is me painting it the old-fashioned black.
Looks a bit modular too, Ronnie. That you could make it different sizes.
Correct. And so there is another one that's in a similar theme. So this is in the same set. It's the Mushroom Weird Night Stalker sci-fi Legion World set, both with a kind of thingy. But now I've glued mine together because I'm an idiot, except this bit here. You've got 3 pieces on each one. You've got, no, it's glued on. I don't want to break it. You've got the base. You know it's the base because it's the only bit with a flat bit. Okay. Then you've got the middle, and I've got a middle here. And you know it's a middle because it's got a concave bit at the bottom, convex at the bottom, and concave at the top. So it goes on a one and has something else on top. And then you've got a topper, and you can tell it's a topper because it can't take anything on top of it.
Yep.
And then what's
That's
wonderful.
Awesome. Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, having rigid trees that you can play with and drop and they don't lose their flocking, right? And paint them up like a thematic table is going to be a lot of fun. Is that the same material as your terrainscape? I mean,
terrain crate stuff. So it's going to pop out.
Yeah.
So you're going to get, this is 5-6 inches tall, 3 pieces. Glue. Thinking of putting little magnets slots in them so people can magnetize them. So you can pack them all away, put them back together, glue them together and have them finished. If you're a tournament organizer, you get all your terrain in one box. You know, paint it, varnish it, dum. But this goes, this middle piece can go on there. It doesn't have to go that way. But not only you get a big base, there's a small base. Small base, that's a middle. There's a topper, there's a tree. But the small base can just take this topper straight as a bush.
Yeah. Or a handle on a unit base, right? Put it on the corner,
Correct.
you got a thematic base, and it's rigid. You can pick it up. You don't have to touch your beautiful models.
Yeah,
fantastic.
You can put that in the corner, and it goes on your Night Stalkers.
It's the best wood I've seen on camera for a while.
For sure. Now, Ronnie, this is Kings of War, so woods have an area, right? Are you going to give us something to put it on, or?
Correct. So in this case, what we're going to probably start with at this stage is the neoprene. Yeah, but we'll give you that. So you just go, and this is something that I learned when I played that huge big battle against Rob, because I spent ages, if you remember, building the terrain. That was my lockdown project. Right, it's daylight outside now, Matt.
I know. It won't be long and I'll have to go to work.
Yeah,
you can see the gum trees in the back.
Yeah, that's cool.
So you showed me your wood, and I'll show you my bush.
Oh, I like where you're going with this. And so at this point, and what I realised was I glued all the trees down, it kept falling over, and then when we came to actually fight and move through the trees, you couldn't move through them. So you pop these on your bit of neoprene, you take them off when you're doing it, and you put it back on again. We may well then upgrade those and give you MDFs of a set size. And then you want jungle trees. Here's a base. We know it's a base because it's flat. Here's a middle. Here's a topper.
Oh, I'm digging that. Those are cool. Yeah, those are cool. Those are unique. Those don't look like any other trees. Yeah, those look.
Oh, yes.
Is that like a? Yeah, that's like a Venus flytrap or something.
Correct. So you've got the jungle theme too. You want it just different? There you go. It's just a straight base onto the topper.
Oh man!
So you're going to have bushes, trees, large trees, middle trees. You build whatever you want. You paint whatever you want. You thematic. Just go straight on there. It's got like teeth.
Exactly. What about hills? You start with woods. What about hills and other pieces of terrain?
One thing at a time. I haven't worked out hills yet. We're going to work those out for next summer. But we've got some new sci-fi. Nice. That's why I've kind of segued. Because all of this is not just fantasy. This is absolute sci-fi. You know, this is. I want 40k players to look at their gaming table and think, "Oh shit! You know what? He's right. I need to buy some sci-fi trees. It's going to be my mission in life to destroy every tree, every K&M tree that's out there. I'm going to just like smash them on the floor when I see them, unless it's a green and pleasant halfling army. But we're going to have some. And the cool thing about these is goes with our Dead Zone stuff, because when you're playing Dead Zone, you have the buildings, you have the ruins, but the actual scatter, the stuff that makes it look like Stalingrad in space, isn't existing. Right. So we're going to do a whole pile of just cool Stalingrad in space. But if you played a certain other game, and it's very important to know where the building starts and stops, you can put down one of our flat-edged pieces between your two back points and say, that is the back part of the building. So thematically, your game still looks good, but you've solved a rules issue that kind of winds people up.
Yeah.
You can put a corner piece and a wall piece. So it's got aesthetic use for nutters like me, but gaming use for those psychos that care about things like rules.
Circling back to Firefight, Ronnie, I got to ask about Rabs, when they coming. Brian Novak would shoot me if I don't ask.
Yeah, no. Well, we've said so interestingly, we are talking to someone we might have some. Yeah, Rebs will get some feature, some next year. It could be quite big if we can get this working with this new tooling guy, because when you're doing a firefight army, you've got to do it all. And, we've learned that with Kings of War. You can't mess around. If you're going to do it, let's do it. So, and of course, the hardest army to do is the Rebs, because what are they? We can do, hey, there's some humans, there's some GCPS that have rebelled. That would feel fine, but boring.
Teratons. There's so many aliens in that army. What do you put on the sprue? Right.
Correct. And then do you do a sprue with 5 different aliens and run it 10 times? And then do you theme the squads by Grogan, by Sphere, by Sorak, or do you actually mix them as they are in Dead Zone? Well, actually, that isn't necessarily. You don't take in Dead Zone. In Firefight, you take squads of heavy weapons. You take squads of close combat. So I think it would be kind of boring then if you put all of the races into their own things. Or do you just make it all a Sphere army? We've talked about that, and just say, let's do Sphere. And let's say this year, the equivalent of the Mandrake Rebellion is the Sphere Planet Rebels, and they're going to be the Rebs. But then you don't get Teratons, and you don't get the... So it's the most evocative and coolest army, and the hardest for us to get our head around.
Mm-hmm.
How about...
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, so we're coming at it, and we're trying to work out how to do it, and we will work it out, but it's just, we need a bit more information, and we need to kind of, have a good plan to keep Firefight. I think it kind of launched really well, and then it's hard to keep it in the public eye, and what we've got to do is kind of come back at it again and say, right, blow the dust off, we're going to have 3 months of Firefight, get your armies out, let's get playing. And the critical to this is we don't want to be getting all the Kings of War players to play Firefight, and therefore we want a load more people to come in and go, I love sci-fi, I love tanks, I want to play this game, and our audience doubles, and our objective for the next 3 years is however many people are playing Mantic now, we want twice as many, and then twice as many again. And I think if we can get there, we're in a very exciting place.
Awesome. How about vehicles? You mentioned tanks. We're going to see Marauder Raptors in Firefight. Are we going to see more big stuff coming?
I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this, but the game I want to the upgrade. So we're going to do a book next year, forces and all the good stuff and all the balanced stuff. But Panzerfaust, Panzer War. What I want to do is add a layer on top of Firefight, because at the moment it's a tank and 50 infantry, a couple of vehicles and 50 infantry, and I'd love to make it 9 tanks and 50 infantry, or 6 tanks, 3 squads of 3. Our tanks are lovely. They're easy to build. They're great fun. It's a far more interesting way of going from 1,000 points to 2,000 points. And I think it plays in a sci-fi kind of, way. Then you can start having brigades of tanks that have command points and have special weapon upgrades that could be STLs. So you can print them yourself. So we sell packs of 3 tanks. And if you want the resin, here's the resin. And if you don't, just go and get your mate to 3D print them so you can do the upgrades and all the sandbags and all the other cool things that go on them. But now, how cool does that game look? Like now, tanks, infantry taking the objectives, and and then make the tanks more interesting again, because at the moment they're on. They're dead. But actually, if we make it a tank game, so you can play tank and infantry, or tanks with infantry, then the tanks can be, you take a load of damage on the left side, tracks are off, half speed, or you can't turn, you're now immobile, blah, 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 blah. And I think that would be really cool, and I think a unique space for a 6x4 gaming. And
awesome.
I'm very excited about that. So it's a challenge.
Well, I know we're wrapping up here a little bit. We're coming to the end. We're running out of questions, but I do need to ask, what's up with Dead Zone? What do you got planned? You got anything coming for Dead Zone?
Yeah, well, actually, what's nice now, Dead Zone Firefight will get the same book. It's almost that dual cover. It probably won't be dual cover because then you have a book and you can't put the barcode anywhere, but it'll be a split cover. Dead Zone Firefight. Here's the area we're looking at. So that Warpath Universe upgrades all come at the same time. They come in the same book. The app will obviously, you're going to have them in there. So having that, the Kings of War players, hopefully, got an extra quid. I've got the whole app. Go on, let me have a look at Firefight then. Let me have a look at Dead Zone then. But interestingly, Dead Zone sells week in, week out. That is one of our, I know, because the warehouse manager, there's 2 resin models. And every single Monday, he comes in and tells me how many molds he's cast that week of those 2 models. So, in a painful way that he's had to do it yet again. Can you please make them in plastic? But it's chunking along. I think the word of mouth on Dead Zone is really solid. It looks beautiful. There's no other game that looks like it. It can go on your kitchen table. Building the terrain is as much fun. And the only thing it lacks is some great scatter. Well, that's going to get solved. And then very, very soon, just a huge way you can literally throw it down. You want the barricades, you want that running up stuff. I think it's just missing that. And so, and obviously getting a Dead Zone faction out is easier than getting a Firefight faction out. So if we do anything for Firefight, you've definitely got it for Dead Zone. But, we're going to be working on that, and we've got some plans, and it will be cool.
So you're on mute, Rob.
What a rookie!
Such a rookie. Ronnie, do you think there's anything we haven't covered that you would like to talk to us about?
No, I mean I've jabbered at you for an hour 45, so I'm sorry if I've been boring. I think.
Oh no, but I do have one final question. What's
okay? I'd love to come on again soon. So I will say that because there's a lot of cool things going on, and like I say, I was out of the loop for a year with ops and just cleaning up after the mess that was.
You can come on anytime, mate.
One final question, Ronnie. What's life like without Rob Berman?
Oh, he's such a total and utter. It's a shame. We loved Rob. He was a lovely, lovely guy. What was tough was at the end. It was tough for him, and that was tough for me to see. because he's such a lovely guy, you know. So I think, you know, he'll take a little break and then he's going to be back in the room in some capacity because he loves our games and he loves what we do. And I think he'll have I often say to people, you know what, being in the real world and keeping this as your hobby, it's quite a nice place to be. When this is your job, it's what do you do in what do you do in the other time when you watch Man City? Because what else can you do? You know, it's hard, and actually Rob managed that phenomenally, and he never took a break during lockdown. You know, he and I and a lot of the warehouse people just worked all the way through. And I know people found furlough hard, but you know, keeping going and never getting a break. So lovely guy. He asked me to buy a game for him when he was at Essen for him and his kids to play. So we miss him. We miss him because he's so enthusiastic. He was such good fun and good value. But as always, nature abhors a vacuum, and other people. Martin's like blossoming, and he's taking on some of that responsibility and getting on with it. And you know, Elliot's come in and he started whacking on the app, and he's just as crazy as Rob was in a different way. So there's things going on, and life moves on, and yeah, I think we'll still see Rob, but in the best way that he can just enjoy his hobby for what
Absolutely. It is. Well, Ronnie, I'll let Matt chime in here too, but thanks for coming on. It's been a delight.
Thanks,
lots of interesting stuff that Matt will probably email me later about. He wasn't supposed to say that. But,
that's a lie. We're not doing that. He agreed not to say that. Yeah, all coming. I'm going to get Martin telling me off. But anyway, there you are. That's the world according to Ronnie. The reality will be somewhat different. Yeah.
And that's we're just in time. I'm starting to hear "Daddy" from the monitor. Yeah.
Well, what a wonderful thing to hear.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for joining us, Ronnie, and thanks to our watchers this time and our listeners who might tune into this later. And until next time, keep countercharging.